The second I ran into Connor on Walnut Street a few months ago, I squealed, "OMG, can I hug you?" Yes. Okay, second question. Will you be on my podcast? In this episode, you'll learn that Connor and I met through Temple University, and I was so excited to hear how much he valued his experience with the education department at Temple. I've mentioned on a few episodes that I'm going to be teaching within Temple's education department starting in just a few short weeks, so I will strive to contribute to this type of impact. One of the other students we worked with while at Temple was Malcolm Kenyatta. He was a powerhouse in the Temple student government, and I can't believe I forgot to bring him up during our recording. Malcolm is a force for change, and he will be Pennsylvania's first Black and first openly gay senator. The 2022 race for U.S. Senate here in PA is very competitive, but Malcolm, you know you've got my vote. When Connor and I wrapped up our recording, we were chatting before hanging up the Zoom, and he told me he also forgot his quote he uses often. "My one brother has 6 Emmys, my other brother makes 6 figures, and I work retail and strip." Well, Connor, you are doing so much more than that, my friend. In this episode, you'll learn all about how Connor took placing in second at a male beauty pageant and turned his talents into a passion project and labor of love. Even though he admits he still hates that he lost, I mean, who wouldn't? He might still be a little bitter and a little petty, but he's using that energy for good. Towards the end of the episode, Connor highlights the events he hosts at Tabu in the Gayborhood here in Philadelphia. He hosts trivia every Wednesday night, and CaBEARet has moved back to the first Friday of every month, so you can check out CaBEARet on Friday, January 7th. Also, since the recording, Connor has taken on a larger role with the events team at Tabu, so when he says it's his home and favorite venue, he really means it. When I asked if there was anything else he wanted to share with our listeners, he said kindness, acceptance, and positivity will get you everywhere in life. Nice guys no longer finish last, and keep your socials clean. Well said, Connor. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the following episode, Body Positivity with a Smile, a Shimmy, and a Shake with Connor Michalchuk. Hello, I'm MG, the venue specialist, your host of Beyond the Venue podcast. My guest today is Connor Michalchuk. I have known Connor since 2009. He was an undergrad student at Temple University. When I was in grad school, they called it at Temple a graduate externship, and I oversaw all of the student organizations on campus. And Connor was one of my absolute favorite student leaders that I had the privilege to work with. So he was a student leader in both the Queer Student Union as well as I don't know if I hand selected him or if he volunteered, one of the two, for our student org council. The idea behind it was to get a variety of different folks who are student leaders within their organizations to kind of come to the table because, you know, everybody's got similar issues and, you know, how can we, you know, be the best student leaders we can be? How can we be the best student organizations that we can be? And so I just really enjoyed getting to know you then. And then post-graduation, Connor, I honestly have no idea if I ran into you on the street or if I just saw one of your social media posts, but you went from, you know, my fun pal as a student leader to hosting your own body positivity themed cabaret show called Bearlesque. And I'm like, well, I need to see this. I need to go to this. And honestly, I was thinking about it this morning and I wasn't sure if the very first show that I went was the night before my engagement party. I can't recall if I had gone before that, but that was quite the memorable evening. So we could get into that a little bit later, but I'm so excited you're here today. And how did you come up with this idea for Bearlesque? Because I can't get over how amazing you are, how amazing the show is. And how did you come up with this idea?
So I have it all started because I have a love for musicals. And one of my favorite musicals is Gypsy, about the famous burlesque artist Gypsy Rose Lee. And always had the back of my mind. I'm like, oh, you know, this would be really fun. I think this would be something I'd want to do. But I got the opportunity about 9 years ago. I was a week before they told us we all had to have a talent, and I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't really do anything. So I was like, I'm going to strip. I'm going to make it a comedic striptease. And
this was for a beauty pageant.
This was for the beauty pageant.
Okay.
I ended up coming in second place, and
Ooh.
I bring this up all the time that I lost. I bring it up all the time that I didn't win. And
what was the talent for? Do you remember what the talent was for the person who did win?
They were singing. They sang a song, and they were a very talented singer. Very talented singer, but still bitter, little petty about that.
And who is the host of this beauty pageant? Who is throwing this?
So it was produced by a singer in Philly named Rocco DeFinis, who's a queer Vogue artist and singer locally, and he produced it. But it was hosted by a then unknown Peppermint, who went on to Drag Race.
RuPaul's Drag Race. Okay.
Yes. So this is like years before she was on Drag Race. She was the host for this pageant. So long story short, one of the judges was a producer who approached me and said, "I love what you did. I would love to bring this into a full show." And about 2 months later, we had selected a cast of, I think, 6 of my friends, and it was like, everyone, like, we're gonna do this for free. Like, we're gonna, if we make money, everyone will get paid, but don't expect to get paid. Don't expect anybody to show up. And we started promoting the hell out of it. And 2 months later, we had a packed house. This was at Tabu, the old Tabu, on 12th Street, which was like, a relatively sized bar, but just from back to front, wall to wall people. And that's really how the whole thing started, was just a coincidence, and a lack of talent.
And I know as the show would go on, you would have themes every month. Did you, for that first show, was there a set theme, or was it just pick your song and do your thing?
It was pick your song and do your thing.
Do you remember what your first performance was that night?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of course I do.
Well, it was the talent I lost with.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
It was Bette Midler's Rose's turn from the musical Gypsy.
Okay. So
it was very much about, like, when is it my turn? When is it, like, very like I should be the bigger star here. I was what is it? I would have been a star, but I was born too soon and started too late, is one of the lines in the song. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is this right here.
That speaks to me. And
yes.
So after your first show, did you know that there was going to be a future, that it was going to be ongoing, or did you kind of take a beat to figure out next steps?
Well, it basically turned out that the owners of Tabu were incredibly impressed with the success of it. So
yeah, because that was making them money.
Yeah, oh my God.
Packing that second floor.
And if you've never been to Tabu, it is very much a neighborhood gay bar in the heart of the Philadelphia Gayborhood. It is an accepting, open space for anyone and everyone, and it's just, you drink like a fish there. I mean, you've been, and you just know every time you go.
You are saying all of the correct words of my own personal experience, and as we're having this conversation, I am realizing that the reason I probably found out about Bearlesque in the first place is because Tabu was a great flying fish account. That I completely forgot, the brewery that I spent 5 years of my life working for. That is exactly where I found out about it, was just on a sales call, being in Tabu, hanging out with Phil and Phil. And I think, like, whether it was a poster or a flyer, and I must have either seen your picture, saw your name, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. Hold up. And so I realized, I was like, okay, I have to, there's got to be and Fridays were always difficult for me, having to, work on Friday nights doing samplings, and then Saturdays were for beer festivals. And so I think that's why that Friday, the first the first Friday in March of 2014 would have been my first experience, and drinking like a fish. That was, I for some reason thought it was a good idea to drink martinis that night, and I was not tip top the day of my engagement party. I was a little rough around the edges. But the good news was I was able to be the hostess with the mostest instead of drinking too much, I guess, at my own engagement party. But I had the best time getting to see all of these performances, and every size, shape, every different type of person. Just, I still can't hear Pharrell Williams happy without seeing a bear in leather straps living his best life. Like, that was his song, his performance, and it just, it was so beautiful. And like, I remember my mom pulling me aside and saying, I think she just was so proud of me that I was just like a person, that I was, pulling people up on stage to dance with them during, your intermission or whatever, where it was like a little dance party. And I think she was just impressed that I had the ability to be so inclusive, and just, people are people, and like, let's just have a great time together and celebrate one another. And I'm like, that's just, why can't, so it's like, to her point, I'm like, why can't everybody be like that? Like, why can't we all just dance together and celebrate this life together? So I love that you created this space. And so I know that that Bearlesque did start out as how do you define it? Like the
So yeah, we were very much we called ourselves body positive, but we were really like fat positive. We were celebrating fat and larger bodies. We were celebrating marginalized. We tried to celebrate marginalized people, especially in the trans community, because we wanted to be an open space. If you were going to shows in 2000, and this would have been 2013, 2014, you saw a lot of very either athletic, muscle cut guys doing go-go dancing, or you saw very thin drag queens in like bras and panties and fishnets. There wasn't a lot of room for larger or fat people. And I do want to point out that it's okay to say fat. Some people are very pro that word because taking it back, and I think that that's important. It's important, but however people feel comfortable to identify. But yeah, it was, creating that space was so essential to me, and I think that it helped me on my journey of figuring out where I was in my body acceptance, where I was in my queerness, and just getting out of college. Like, what are your next steps? I don't really know what I want to do next. I went to school to be a teacher. I got my dual bachelor's at Temple University for secondary ed and social studies, got my certification to teach, and now I take my clothes off for money. Like,
there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I mean, you are teaching in your own way.
Oh yeah, everything I learned from my educational career, I've been able to apply to my day job, to my nightlife job, and just how I deal with people, because the education department at Temple University, I can't praise highly enough. It's such a well-rounded curriculum that you can learn so much, and take so much with you to almost any career you go into. So definitely Temple was a huge part of me becoming who I am, but I think Bearlesque was the next piece of the puzzle that fell into place that really helped create this more complete image of myself.
That's awesome. So when was the shift to CaBEARet, which is its current name, and please correct me if I'm mispronouncing it, when did you evolve to kind of have this opening to be more inclusive, to move past just fat and body positivity to open the doors to all?
This is kind of a long story, and it is a little convoluted, but it is, I think, very important. Um, when I had mentioned earlier, a producer had seen me at the pageant and wanted to take what I was doing and make it a full show. And for years we worked together, and then into about so we've been doing this for about 9 years. So about 4 or 5 years into our partnership, it became abundantly clear that he was using some less than ethical practices, mostly in not paying people what they were due. There is some allegations of, and I'm going to say trigger warning here on this, but there's some allegations of abuse of power, sexual abuse of power. So Tabu, to its credit, stepped up and said, we can't have this person working here anymore. This is bad for everyone involved. We need to cut ties. And from there, we continued to use Bearlesque for another year or so. And then we decided altogether that we were going to make the switch to a totally new show, to create a new environment that is like a clean slate, but also more inclusive, and anyone or everyone who wants to perform. So it's not just going to be a burlesque show. It's now going to include drag queens, drag kings who are incredibly talented, but are underrepresented in shows generally. And I think another big piece of us switching to CaBEARet was during the pandemic. There was a Philly performer town hall where every performer was kind of called in to talk about issues more dealing with lack of Black and brown representation in shows, but also in trans representations and non-binary representations in shows. So that was about a three-hour Zoom town hall where several producers were brought up. Things were kind of talked out and new rules were set. And I think that
how many people were on that call?
Oh God, really the amount of people. There were 3 people who were hosting it. Vinchell was one of them. Amber Hikes, who was, I think at the time, still with City Hall for LGBT affairs, and there was a third person. I can't recall who the third person was, and I apologize that I don't remember. I don't remember the person, but they called about 10 or 15 producers up, but there had to have been at least like 300 people watching.
Wow.
Because it was anyone and everyone who was involved in nightlife was on this call watching this. And a few of the good things that came out of this was because Philadelphia is, I use the word diverse, but really it is like, there is a huge Black and brown population here. And I think that, it was really great that they decided that in order for shows to be compliant with certain things, we needed to make sure that there was 50% representation of BIPOC people, and we had to be inclusive of trans and non-binary performers. We had to make sure everyone was respectful of pronouns, and that's kind of the reason why we had this switch to CaBEARet. Is we really wanted to come in clean and start again. And even though our show had always been inclusive, we wanted to make sure like there are no uncertain terms, that we support POC, trans people, we support whatever talent you want to be on stage, we want to bring you in. And that's why we went from that, ambiguously burlesque show to all-inclusive cabaret variety show that's going to be different every month. So every month is going to be a completely different show with a completely different cast. The only thing that doesn't change is I am the host, and I'm kind of handpicking these people who are going to be on my stage.
Oh, just like a podcast host that handpicks her guests of who she wants to give a platform to each week. I know the feeling. So it's been a rough couple of years. So I ran into you recently on the street, and that's why I was like, "Oh, I have to have you on my show."
Literally
so
accosted
exciting.
on
Like
Walnut
literally,
Street.
oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. And I believe that I asked permission if I could hug you, because I'm still making sure that, like, if it's someone that I haven't seen in a while, like between COVID and boundaries, like I'm just trying really, because we're both like huggers and outgoing people, and so it's just like I just want to make sure that this is okay. Because my husband and I were running around the city trying to find him a suit for this black tie wedding, which, got to share pictures with you. Suit Supply, like, huge shout out to those guys. 16th and Locust. The suit, his 3-piece suit for the black tie wedding, was fabulous, and he's going to be wearing his second suit that he bought this coming weekend for another wedding that we're going to. But I know you were like on your lunch break, and so we didn't have much time to chit chat, but I was like, we'll save it for the podcast. Like, but you shared with me how you were able to go beyond the venue with, CaBEARet. So, share with our listeners what, cause clearly we were not doing, indoor entertainment in 2020. So how, March 2020 hits, and what did that look like for you and your show?
So before we get into that, I have to tell you this really funny story. It's funny in hindsight. It's not as funny at the moment, but
like my engagement party. Yes, I totally get that.
February of 2020, I was booked in a amazing event in Palm Springs, California, called International Bear Convergence. And for those, we're using this term bear like everyone knows. A bear is a hairy, larger gay man. It's a very common term, just in case everyone doesn't know that. But International Bear Convergence was a weekend of like pool parties and drinking. And because we were booked in it, we had kind of the run of things. Anything we wanted, we got. And it was an amazing experience. And I definitely came back with COVID and had no idea. I definitely came back with COVID.
And that's the thing, because if it's international and you got folks coming in, and California got hit before we did. So
exactly.
So what? So did you have other people that were sick as well? And like, what were your symptoms? Like, did you get back to Philly and you're like, I am dying. Like, I have the worst flu I've ever had.
High fever, the dry cough, loss of taste and smell. And then that went away after a couple of weeks. But of course, it's like the last weekend, the day before the shutdown, this would have been Sunday, March, like 13th or whatever it was. It was whatever.
That was my birthday weekend. So yeah, we went out on, I think it was Monday the 16th.
Yeah. So this was Sunday. And I'm not sure if you remember, there was a bar, social lounge called Volani in the Gayborhood. It's since closed down, but the last show that they had at Volani was my good friend Brittany Lynn, her birthday show, and I had just gotten over COVID, and she was unaware that she had COVID. So we were at this show, and like 8 or 9 performers and a few audience members all tested positive later that week, and it was just one of those things where it's like, we can't have this happen. So
this is why we had a lockdown.
Yeah, this is why we had a lockdown.
Exactly why the lockdown happened. Okay, so Connor is responsible for bringing COVID to Philly. I get that. And then the nightlife performance in the LGBTQ community is who is responsible for spreading it. Got it. Thanks.
Bring your pitchforks and torches now, please. So the reason I tell this story is because it actually goes back to Brittany Lynn. Brittany has been working in the Philly drag community for 23 or 24 years at this point. She has become a huge mentor for me, and she runs a organization that I'm a part of called the Philly Drag Mafia. And this was started in the late 90s, early 2000s, because drag queens were getting well underpaid for hours of work, sometimes not even getting paid at all. And a lot of these people were men of color, and then a lot of trans women of color, where this was the drag scene in the late 90s, early 2000s. And she started this organization, the Drag Mafia, because she wanted to basically say, we won't work unless you pay us X amount. Everyone is basically unionizing drag queens and trans women who worked in the drag community. So Philly Drag Mafia, I give a lot of credit to because that was the reason why I was able to perform so much outside of the venue. We started doing Monday. It was like kind of like a happy hour show called Showgirl Mondays at Shataya Thai on Walnut between 11th and 12th. It's this cute little Thai restaurant, and we would essentially just like walk up and down the sidewalk and perform to people in the middle of the day on Monday. And like, of course, there's me like taking my clothes off on Walnut Street at 4 p.m. There's like the 6'4" drag queen, and that was kind of our first taste of outdoor. And of course,
what time of year was this? Because
this would have been summer. This would have been in
okay, because I guess as like they were starting to like not necessarily like loosen restrictions per se, but I know that like I think outdoor dining started.
Outdoor dining was like, what it was.
Second half of May, June of 2020.
But I think the real smart thing that we did was there were two venues we worked with. One is a winery in New Hope, which the name is escaping me right now. That has a beautiful like they have like a beautiful patio. Sandcastle Winery, yes. So they have that. I am the venue specialist. They have that great patio overlooking the vineyards. So what they were able to do was give us a space to kind of perform on that patio, which we got to sell out. You know, a lot of shows doing that. But my absolute favorite is, Drag Mafia rented a bus park. It was essentially like a bus parking lot for tour buses in Atlantic City. So when buses aren't being used, they basically just pull into these spaces. So what we did was we spaced out 6 feet. I think they were by 6 by 6 or something like that, or 10 feet space, 10 by 10 spaces, 6 feet apart, and we sold them as like a outdoor bring a lawn chair. It's a drive-in drag show. So we spaced people out according to the CDC. Kept people in their boxes. One of the local bars put out a nice little cocktail stand where people could get drinks and whatnot. And this was one of the only shows that was going on at the time. This would have been, we started doing this in probably June, July, August, September, October. And by October in Atlantic City, it's freezing. So we're like, all right, we'll be back in the spring. And then the spring of 2021, we kind of brought it back for a few months. But yeah, COVID was a weird time. But I think like, thanks to people like Brittany Lynn, we were able to get really creative in what we were doing. And some things worked, some things didn't. Bob and Barbara's did a great, like Bob and Barbara's was another one that kind of adapted where they basically had drag queens first started off as performing on the sidewalk like Shataya Thai, but then they realized that there's a wine bar across the street. So we just basically took over South Street, that block between 15th and 16th on South Street. You would just have drag queens parading in the streets and like collecting money from either side of people and just making tons and tons of money and being able to like get their money back that they missed over the last few months. So it was an interesting time, but I think, between the outdoor events, I did a couple of online shows, not really my thing, personally. But I will say some drag queens were super successful in it. There was, I think it's Diva Baby and Pie do a show where they just literally sit there and eat Cheetos and watch Degrassi on Zoom, and they record it, and it just gets like 1,000 views. Like they just sit there and just watch 2 episodes of Degrassi and just talk during it. It's like this is there's a market for it, I mean, found a hole.
That's amazing. That belongs on Bravo. That's amazing. So I do have a question. I would love for you to share with our listeners. I feel like not everybody has been to a drag show, or if they have, maybe they just went once with a friend. Can you talk about how to tip the performers? Because I think that this is a concept that if you don't know what you don't know. So unless you have a friend that you're with, it's like the last drag show that we went, Devil's Den was doing, I think they're doing it monthly now. I don't know if they still are, but they're doing outdoor performances. And they actually had a server come around, and like, how many singles would you like? That I thought was, I've never seen. I haven't. I haven't been to. I could probably count on two hands how many drag shows I've been to in my life. Maybe four hands. But I know to usually come with singles, and I thought it was great that there was actually a person going around making change for everyone. So that way it's like, you will tip these queens. Like, you will. I thought it was great. So what's for someone who's never been, or maybe someone who's not aware of tipping, what's kind of the go-to?
Yeah, tipping is it's how we make the majority of our money as performers. Not to get down to brass tacks, but like a lot of times, we're getting paid $75, $100, maybe if we're really lucky, $150 for a gig. Which, when you take into time the makeup, the amount of money you spend, it
probably pays for one shoe.
Yeah, really. Like, I mean, I have gowns that are $900 in my closet. It's custom made, custom hand beaded, like stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you're watching somebody perform, because it costs a lot of money. And there's always the joke, it costs a lot of money to look this cheap, but it does. It costs a lot of money to do this. And a lot of us do it as either a full-time career or as a passion project. I'm fortunate enough that I have a full-time job that pays well, it has benefits, and this is my extra and social outlet. But if you go to a drag show, bring $20 to $40 with you, change out the first 20, and $20 should probably be enough for a drag show if you're just tipping in once. If you see something you really love, feel free to throw a ton of money at that person, but that again, like, that is how we make the majority of our money, is through tips. And bars have gotten smart to this, that they'll start stocking in ones, and at the end of the day, I will go to the bartender and hand them back my pile of ones, and they'll change it out for 20s and larger bills. So it's one, we need it because we're poor, but two, like, it also, like, it makes us know that we're doing a good job. Applause is great, but tips are really a great way for us to know, like, hey, I love what you're doing, or like, hey, I want you to continue this kind of performance stuff. So yeah, please tip your performers and your bartenders and your servers.
Yes. Something you've said that you say many, many times over and over as a host.
Yes. I always say, whenever there's if there's a bar, and I apologize to Christians everywhere, I always like to say the Tabu is a good Christian bar. We follow the word of our Lord, John Luke 24:12. If you ain't tipping, you ain't sipping. So
I love that. And are you, so now that we're vaccinated, we're going back out, have you been performing indoors in person over the last couple months?
Absolutely. I started up, before we started up with shows again, I was running trivia at Tabu, and again, to Tabu's credit, like, always trying to figure out, like, how can we work around this? How can we provide some form of entertainment? How can we stay alive as a business, really? We started doing trivia, but instead of doing, everyone writes down their answers, gives me the sheet of paper at the end of the round, I grade it, I give it back. We just went digital and started using the television screens and did it like Jeopardy, where people would buzz in using an app on their phone.
Oh, cool.
And they could just answer it. So it's just basically like finding new ways to work around it. So that was the first kind of taste back in nightlife, was running that. Full mask, plastic sheet, just like the bartenders. People had to stay in their chairs. And then we moved to in-house shows again at Tabu, at which point we were still wearing facial shields and masks, and then finally everything was kind of lifted. So yeah, it was a little scary to come back to, and I think we were hesitant again because tips are how we make our money. So how do you kind of go into an audience and collect money from people when you're scared to get near anyone? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I saw that I thought was brilliant was people bought butterfly catching nets. Like, the ones with, like, they have like a good, like 6-foot yes. extender on it. You're like, okay, walking around, like, here, you just put it in the basket and then sanitize the hell out of it when you get home. So
I love that.
Yeah, that's how we kind of inched our way back in. But now things have really started to feel a little normal again. Philly has made it. All the Gayborhood bars came together and said, if you're not vaccinated, if you can't show proof of vaccination, you can't get in.
Okay.
And I think that was like the moment when it's like, all right, we can kind of breathe a little bit. It's still something to be cautious of, but everyone here is at least vaccinated and was smart enough to get their vaccine, or were able to get their vaccine.
Since you mentioned that you did have COVID, how did you react to the vaccination?
Oh, I was the first shot. I was tired. I got Pfizer.
Pfizer
first
gang.
shot, I was a little, yeah. I was a little tired on the first shot. Second shot, I was like, oh, I heard the second shot's the worst. I'm gonna take 3 days off it from work and just be prepared. And of course, like took a couple of Tylenol PMs and went to bed. Next morning, I'm like, oh, I feel great. Like this, I could go. And now I have 3 days off. Cool. So
on a vacation.
So I got very lucky.
And I heard different, obviously everybody reacts differently. And kind of like a common theme I was hearing from some of my friends who also had COVID, that the first shot was worse than the second. But if you did not have COVID, that the second shot's going to be worse. And we were talking about this before the recording started, that you mentioned your friend was getting his booster and his flu shot, and the same day, what the hell was he thinking? And it's like, well, I am doing that next week. But again, I'm giving myself a couple days off, that if this booster and the flu shot take me out for a couple days, I will just be a lazy lump on the couch with my dog, and we'll watch some bad television. Maybe I've never seen an episode of Degrassi High, but a couple of queens eating Cheetos. This sounds like very entertaining. So who knows?
Yeah.
The options will be limitless. And so I've been very fortunate to have my dog and my husband during the lockdown. I'm really not sure what your living situation has been like. Like what we've all been through it in different ways, and so from how has this last kind of year and a half treated Connor the person, and how have you been able to, I don't know, just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, taking care of your friends? What has all of that looked like for you?
Well, I think COVID, I was very fortunate for COVID because I had, at the time I was living with two of my friends in a very large house where we had a lot of space. We also had a nice outdoor patio. We were out in University City. So there was enough space for all of us that we could be alone. And because we were in University City, it was really easy for us to kind of get out of the house, walk for, 4 miles, come back and feel like we actually got out and did something. We also ate, the first week we ate complete slobs. We were eating whatever we wanted. We were having, maybe each of us were probably having a pint of ice cream a night, or a half a pint of ice cream a night. And I think after the first week, we're like, oh no, this is not going to be over anytime soon. So
this is not a 2-week lockdown. This is going to go on a little bit longer.
This is the long haul. So my roommate at the time, Chris, who's from Georgia, basically became the house mother, the southern house mother, who's like, all right, I'm going to cook dinner. Y'all clean the dishes and the pots and pans. And so we just were and because we had that nice patio, we had a full grill. So every day we were eating grilled veggies and steak or chicken or shrimp or whatever protein we could get our hands on. So I ended up actually losing about 60 pounds over quarantine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I guess it's taking advantage of walking, and because you also mentioned your day job. Can you fill me in? Can you talk about that as well, and how that was affected? Due to COVID?
So I manage a luxury beauty care store downtown, and we had to close because we were. I think we could have stayed open because we sell soap, but we made the decision as a company, nationally, to close all stores. We were closed for 3 months. The first month, they paid everyone their normal rate for their average hours per week. I was salary at that point, so I was making my salary for the first month, and then the second month they had to cut it down to 70%. And after the second month, basically everyone went into furlough um, until their store could reopen. So I was very fortunate that my company, like while I was applying for unemployment, because I knew that they had basically told us there's a good chance that there's going to be a furlough. Everyone, please start putting in your applications now. Nothing will be denied, but just claim that the money that you're making from us now until you're no longer making money from us. And because of that, I had a steady income throughout. So, my company was really great at handling that. And even after COVID, we ended up going into Chapter 11, and they did everything they could to keep as many jobs as possible. So we did end up closing a number of stores in the New York and LA area and San Francisco. But, basically anywhere a landlord was willing to work with us, we were able to stay open. So I was very fortunate.
Philadelphia, your store.
Yep. So I was very fortunate that all of my circumstances during COVID, that I had people that I liked being around most of the time. I had a steady income. Well, you're with the same person every day, and sometimes you just need to I need a day. I need to go into my room and lock the door and order takeout and not see anybody for an entire day. I just need a day to myself.
Yeah, of course.
And I actually just moved in August back to South Philly. So moving in COVID, if you move during COVID, God bless you, because it is not an easy thing to do.
Moving sucks to begin with. I can't imagine doing it during a pandemic.
Yeah, but very fortunate. My COVID experience was very good, and there is that mental health aspect of things that there is the isolation for people who are very outgoing. Before we recorded, you and I talked a little bit about
we love people and we love going out.
We love people.
Hugs.
Can I hug you? I want to hug you, but you can't hug the same two people for 6 months every day. So there's a lot of doubt that comes in. It's are these people really my friends, or am I just imagining this because I'm an incredibly outgoing person, or do I like the person that I am? Kind of that self-analysis, and a lot of doubt can really screw you up. And I was fortunate enough to have a support system down here that I could call my friend and just say I need an hour of your time. Can we please talk? And I think it's as simple as that. If you're struggling, try to have one or two people that you can lean on, and ask them first if they have the capability to be leaned upon.
Yeah, because not everybody has the bandwidth to handle someone else's baggage. And sometimes it's difficult because you want to be there for people, but at the same time, you don't know if they're kind of hiding or not speaking out about what they're going through, you might not know. But yeah. I haven't thought about that before, of essentially asking someone's permission of can I dump this on you?
Yeah, it's something that a friend of mine put in my head because he was struggling and would always ask me. And I'm somebody who holds a lot of stuff in, and I'm able to kind of take on a lot of other people's emotional baggage and weight because I just feel relatively sturdy in myself. But there are times like that, during COVID, where I just had to call a couple of people and say, I need an hour. Can you just listen? Just listen to me for an hour. And if you're able to, let me call you now. And I think that having that one person, or having, somebody that you can call, really helped me remain on that positive side. I'm always a positive person. I always believe that social media should reflect positivity in your life. And this goes to anyone who's a venue person or works in venues. Be positive, because if a venue sees this, a lot of stuff you post on Facebook, just remember, that's out there. But yeah, it's, trying to keep positive, and then knowing when you need to ask for help, and then asking permission before you do the things.
And I know I've had a couple different conversations with different folks about, I've been in therapy for the last 3 years. And so I guess there's there's a purpose for a therapist and like working things out, but sometimes you just want to talk to a friend. So I think also kind of having that self-awareness to know, I don't know, not dumping certain things on people where it's like, okay, no, this is a therapist conversation, not a friendship conversation. But also I definitely agree that it's so helpful to just have like a couple of people that that you can lean on when you kind of just need to either bitch or just talk about nothing and just, I don't know, just kind of like let it out a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, thinking about the therapist thing, therapists are trained to handle certain things like trauma or, emotional instability. Like they're trained in this. Your friends are there to help you and to kind of, you can lean on them a little bit, but there is a time where they aren't capable of helping you where you need it. So, a big proponent for therapy. I think that it is something that I wish everyone had access to when they need it.
I totally agree.
It's not the case here, and in a lot of other places. But try to know when you can lean on your friends and when you need to take a step back and say, all right, I need to talk to a professional because this is beyond their capabilities.
Well, do you have any besides performing, do you have any other hobbies kind of like outside of that, or is it just theater, performing, hosting, and work?
Basically my life is work and nightlife. I'm very, I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I love musical theater. Actually, after we get off this call, I'm heading up to New York to go see a Broadway show. So, that's kind of like my first time back, going to see something on Broadway. So I'm excited for that today.
What are you going to see?
I don't know yet. So actually, I'll find out. So I did this thing back in August. I've done it before. It's called Broadway Roulette, where you pay $60 and you pick a date. And the day of the show at noon, they send you an email and they tell you, all right, you're going to go see this. There are tickets with your name and will call when you get here. The show's at this time.
Right. All right.
So it's like, cool. Like, it's kind of like, we did it before and we ended up seeing King Kong, the musical, which I would have never seen. But you know what? I'm glad I did. So I'm excited to find out what it's going to be today.
Ooh, I can't wait for the follow-up before your episode airs, and I can share with our listeners what you ended up seeing and see how it was.
And I will say the other thing I got really into was buying art from local artists. And I have a lot of, I think right now I have over the last year probably accumulated about the last 2 years probably like 15 new pieces, and a lot of stuff is just stuff that like I'm on Facebook and I see friends of mine who are artists. I was like, I really love this, I would love this painting. Or we just got back from Puerto Vallarta and I met a local drag queen down there named Tamale Ringwald is her name, and I'm just like,
yes, I love that.
Like, I immediately felt a kinship, and he had done a series of large paintings on canvas of bears in various forms of undress. But they were like, one of them is my favorite that I bought was this bear wearing Mickey Mouse ears eating a taco, and it's just like this 30 by 39 like neon paint, like blue and pink and black and white. It's gorgeous. And shout out to Tamale Ringwald, who basically was able to unstretch these canvases and get them so I could get them on the airplane to take home.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah. I think that that's another thing that kind of over the pandemic I realized that like I think that this is something that makes me happy. It's something that brings joy to my life.
Brings you joy, yeah.
And if I can afford it, and support somebody, then yeah, I'm really happy about that.
That's awesome. Very important to support our local businesses. And I did have a quick question. Can you clarify what a drag king is?
A drag king is it's a male it's usually a male drag persona. So to kind of put a little bit of perspective, a drag queen is typically female presenting, a drag king is more masculine presenting. But I think with this younger generation of performers, gender has become, the lines of gender are almost non-existent in these younger kids in the drag community. And I say kids, but I'm 32, they're 25, and I'm like, oh, these damn kids,
the whippersnappers.
So there's a couple of drag kings. I think one of my favorites that I've gotten to work with is a non-binary person, and their drag king persona is Hannibal Licker, Lickher, and they do an amazing Justin Bieber, like a really good douchey Justin Bieber.
That's amazing.
And they do basically they have like drag queens will sometimes wear like a latex breastplate that's about 30 pounds of latex that's meant to look like breasts, and drag kings can actually buy a full, it's almost like a tank top, but it's latex, and it's like pectoral muscles and abs, and I'm just like, I want one of these just to own. Like, this is amazing.
Connor with a 6-pack. I'm here for this content. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate that. So,
oh yeah.
Okay, so I want to know all about your favorite venue. You have performed in a ton of places. You've obviously been to probably shows all over the country. So whatever your favorite venue is, regardless of why it's your favorite. And yes, you are allowed to have more than one answer.
Yeah. I'm like flat out, Tabu has always been my home. This is our 9th year with the show there, and the owner, Jeff Sotland, and Phil Sobolewski has been like really fantastically supportive throughout the years. That is always going to be my home venue. But if I were to pick one really cool venue that I've gotten to work in, I really loved working at the TLA.
Okay.
Working at the TLA was really cool. But I also, and it's not there anymore, unfortunately, but out by the Keswick Theater, next to the Keswick Theater, there is a place called Dino's Backstage, and they're unfortunately have closed since then, but it was a 1950s social lounge where like it just was like the black and white marble tiled floors, even the dressing rooms were like faux fur like blankets on the white leather couches, the vanity mirrors that you would see in old Hollywood. Like, they made this venue into like literally from top to bottom was an old Hollywood social club that you would see something like Judy Garland performing at, and that was really, really, really cool. Plus, they would pick people up in a Rolls Royce limo and bring them to the venue. Like, it's just
wow.
Yeah, like it was. They really went all out for their shows, and I think that's something that I really wish I could see more often, was people who have like a venue that is completely cohesive from the minute that you walk in to the minute that you leave. Every piece you experience is that theme, and it's not like camp, it's not kitsch, it's like glamour. But like I said, unfortunately, they're not there anymore. But hopefully, somebody will buy that space and will continue the tradition.
Look forward to that one day for sure. Well, please let our listeners know both where they can follow you, as well as any upcoming events you have after the holidays, starting in January of 2022, and maybe where our listeners can find out about some of these events.
So I do my monthly show at Tabu every second Friday of the month, CaBEARet. I believe we're moving towards the cash at the door kind of thing. We may move towards a ticketing situation. So right now that's all up in the air because we are switching, and we're switching event management.
Okay.
So I wish I could give more, but I will have, I'll give that to you later so you can put it in the notes. You can catch me on Instagram at Bearlesque Connor. That's BearlesqueConnor. And as always, I always try to push people towards the Philly Drag Mafia, phillydragmafia.com. Bringing drag queens together, making sure there's fair and equitable pay for everyone. And please make sure you follow them. That's their website. There's also Brittany Lynn on Instagram. And I'm always performing with them, so you can find me there. And you can always catch me every Wednesday at Tabu running trivia on the first floor. We do it like Jeopardy. It's real fun. It's real fast. It's an hour and a half of your time, but you'll have a blast.
Awesome. Well, I might have to stop by after this booster shot. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed listening to Connor and I's conversation as much as I have enjoyed having it. Follow Beyond the Venue podcast on Instagram and check out all of season 2 on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Enjoy the rest of your day.